Apologize for that. The stream crashed for some reason. I don't know when it crashed. I apologize. I just saw the error message on my screen a few seconds ago, so hopefully it wasn't crashed for a long time. Um, Good morning, everybody. Hopefully we're all back. I do apologize. The stream crashed. So I'm looking at the news currently. Not really seeing any news coming out that's telling us that we should be buying or anything just yet. Oil is very elevated, so I am looking for oil to continue pulling upward on the day. Now, volatility has been just pushing downward pretty much the entirety of the day so far. Really unexpected because we are seeing, a lot of our instruments that are selling are telling us that we should be selling. Um, they have not been giving us a lot of signals of selling just yet. QQQ. We're looking for this head and shoulders to form on the 1 minute time frame. NVIDIA here has just been pretty much buying the entire day. So we are looking for a pullback within NVIDIA. Microsoft here has been giving us a little bit of pullbacks again. Gave us the original pullback the early morning. Second pullback so far, not fully successful yet. Can be invalidated, but looking for that to continue building outward. Now, QQQ, I want to see if this head and shoulders gets invalidated. So if we see a little bit of further upside action, then we will be seeing that validated. And on semiconductors, we're seeing, um, this selling trend line starting to break down. So buying within the day, which I really don't understand too much. I'm assuming it's mainly due to the news with the Iranian officials, but it's very conflicting because we're seeing oil rise with that news. The oil or USO did pull down to 129.30 when that news was released, but it's just been continuing to rise ever since. Volatility, on the other hand, has just been pretty much pulling downward the entirety of the day. So I am looking for volatility to pull upward, but we are seeing a lot of buying within the day. This head and shoulders has been invalidated. I'm going to mute my mic for a second. Yeah, I'll take a look at CoreWeave, I'll look at Apple, I'll take a look at precious metals. But we're seeing, hold on, I just want to delete some of the structure. Because we are starting to see some of this buying really take over the day, which they did not give us an entry on, unfortunately. With the 5 minute time frame here, again, all the entries have been just pretty much within the puts, which for the SPY, they have not been paying out today. Um, Very unfortunate type of day within the SPY. Still seeing oil climbing, and we're still seeing volatility dropping. So weird day. Um, let's look at precious metals, and I want to look at pig and liquid again. So HIG is really not showing a lot of buying. It did pull down in the morning, had a little bit of a gap upward because of that. Of course, we had, the bad news over the weekend, and then we did have, some of that good news this morning. But from that, we've seen a little bit of buying and then tapering so far. So not really showing the buying that we're seeing within SPY. Precious metals, we're selling throughout the majority of the morning. Um, Now just slowly buying upward. So, excuse me. So this is running in tandem with oil, how it should be, but we're not seeing the dollar running in tandem with oil, which is what's really kind of the main concern of the day is that oil's pulling upward, but we're seeing the dollar move downward. Not usually something that happens, and we're seeing oil pulling upward, and we're seeing okay, good. We are seeing the yields move as they should be. So the yields are pulling upward with oil, and the dollar should be pulling up as the yields pull upward. So again, a lot of signals are telling us that we should be seeing selling on the day. Even with some of the buying we did see. Um, Still seeing signals that should be telling us that we should be shorting into the day. So, 5-minute time frame, just ignoring all the news and everything. We're seeing how we're starting to taper from the upper Bollinger. Even though we have a cup built here, we should be expecting a handle to the downside. From this downside handle, excuse me, very, very likely we'll retest that 20 ma. From that 20 ma, either we're going to have, major buying to the upside, or we will see, this start to sell downward like I really do expect it to do. So all the puts I'm holding, I once again will be holding for this 20 ma exit. No, I have not exited those puts. Just how I trade. If I take the entry at the upper Bollinger, I really do want to see that 20 ma range. Um, if it's not giving us that 20 ma, usually that's, narrative or something like that, which usually means that it will later in the day. So I look for that exit pretty much regardless. Now, with the structure currently being how it is, with our entries being in this area, yes, we've had some entries prior to this. Those, you know, kind of got squeezed out. Unfortunately, nothing we could do about it. But with our entries here, with us not testing the 20 mile, um, and with all the signals that I have been seeing with the selling, this does give us a good case for testing the 5 mile still. Now the 5 mile again is around the 674 range. Very likely it's pulling closer to 675 now that we have been seeing a little bit of buying to the upside. Excuse me, I keep yawning. But from this up complete being completed here, we will be looking for the primary exit on the puts on this 20 mile retest on the 5-minute time frame. That will coincide with the cup as well, because that will create the handle the upside, or it will, break us down from that range. So that's what we're looking for currently. Semiconductors starting to pull back down again. Now, they have not fully completed this upside cup, so technically, this selling structure still is holding, even if it may not have been holding in the way that we originally anticipated. But this is still holding. Okay, why are all of my programs just closing today? Hold on. Okay, Weeple crashed again. Yeah, let me go ahead and look at Gamble. It's been a while since I've looked at that. I do want to look at Apple as well, and I'll look at Neo and CoreWeave. But oil still continuing to break out. Oh, it's really confusing to see volatility pushing to the downside while that's occurring. Same with the market. It's very weird to see this buying when we are seeing oil prices continue to just stay elevated, but we're seeing massive buying out of Nvidia. So that's really taking a lot of weight into the market. And HIG, HIG is still selling here. Within the time and sales, uh, there's pretty much nothing but shares being sold in here. So I am still looking for market to sell. Bitcoin has been bullish. We did hit the upper Bollinger again. So from that upper Bollinger, looking for it to pull back. Dollar is still pulling downward, which I don't understand. And US Treasuries are moving up, which, makes perfect sense. So we have a lot of things that make a lot of sense here. And then we have our volatility pulling downward and buying in the SPY. So I actually just want to check something really quick. So it's Oracle. So it's Oracle, SNDK, Palantir, Microsoft. So some of these techs are gaining weight. I'm just looking at the heat map to see that. Doesn't make a lot of sense though. Um, because again, we do have a lot of selling signals on the day. Okay, so I want to look at Palantir and SanDisk. Palantir completed the cup on the 5-minute time frame. So from that being completed, we should be looking for a handle. Candle to the downside would head towards that 131.78. Now, SanDisk. I don't know why this is never on my watch list. Okay, now it is. All right, so we've been seeing a ton of weight pushed into SanDisk this morning, all the way from the 860 up to the almost 920 on the daily time frame. This is, it looks like a day 3 upper Bollinger move. Let's see. Yeah, that would have been day 1, day 2, day 3. So this is a day 3 extended upper Bollinger move. Um, Again, this when you see the day 3 extend, like um, how do I explain this? When you have the day 3 extend, you have to basically treat it as the day 2. So even though you get a higher high on that day 3 extension, you still have to treat it like the day 2 higher high. So within the day 3 higher high, you again look for the higher high. From that higher high, you're looking for bear structure. From that bear structure, you are looking for the consolidation back to the 5 mile. Now, I do just want to delete a lot of this structure here on QQQ. Obviously, a lot of our techs are doing very well right now, but with this cup completed, we should still be looking for the pullback towards the 20 mile. 20 mile on QQQs at that 610.90. So about $1.70 on QQQ for the downside. On semiconductors, we do have to be cautious of smaller cup here, but we're starting to see, much of that same structure. This larger cup, pull down to form the handle. 20 miles currently at the 687, or excuse me, the 386.75. Sorry if my words or my numbers just turn out all jumbled sometimes. Oil still pushing upward, so not really telling us too much. Volatility continuing to head downward to a new low of the day, so at 106.99. This cup did break out, so no handle for us on that cup, which means that now we have this smaller cup to contend with. Potentially from this cup, look for a handle, and this handle would be at that 678.90 range. Very squeezy day so far. And the dollar, I bet, is still pushing downward. Nope, okay, so the dollar is finally starting to pull upward a little bit, but again, I do want to see this pulling upward pretty much all the way towards where it was earlier this morning, up towards that 99 range. I'm gonna say bye to my daughter really quick. I'll be right back, everybody. Okay, I'm back, everybody. Sorry about that. Okay, so I want to look at Apple here. Apple did have a bit of selling today. Such a weird day. Today's such a weird day. We're seeing buying still within Bitcoin, seeing the dollar just hold weight, seeing liquid starting to sell off, while we're seeing equities push higher. Same with HIG. Makes a lot of sense. Let's see, semiconductors here. We'll see if we continue this trend line, but the buying was pretty brutal on the day. Now, volatility did pull down to the 106.99, is at the 107.43, so slightly pulling back upward again. And our VIX itself did pull underneath that very, very crucial $20 range. Um, but it is looking like it is wanting to build support to try to head upward. So reclaiming that $20 range is important. That is basically that bearish range. Go ahead and show this on the daily time frame. But it's this kind of white consolidation channel that we got going on. So that range holds a lot of weight, and I do expect the VIX to reclaim it today. Now within the SPY, squeezing bears all day. Um, Go ahead and some of the structure. Now again, I still am looking for breakdown within the day. Um, we've been seeing oil absolutely soaring since the good news. Um, and again, this red line is a 10-year trend line. That's that decade, line. So there's a lot of signals telling us that we should be selling. Our corporate credit is starting to sell off. Okay. Our investment grade corporate credit is starting to sell off. We have treasuries starting to sell and form. It's very, very nice. Head and shoulders, very handsome. And oil, absolutely blaring. So again, I don't see why there's the upside buying within equities that there is. Um, Other than that, the dollar is fairly weak today. Um, Even though it's still very elevated, this 98 range is still very elevated, but the dollar has been overall weak in terms of everything else today. So this can be, pushing a lot of that equity weight that we're seeing. But a lot of our other signals are telling us we truly should be having a pullback. So yeah, very tough day so far, especially when they didn't give us any call entry. Um, Technically, the only entry on the morning would have been in the pre-market. So technically, zero call entries on the day. Okay, not ideal. Not the ideal trading day. These type of trading days do happen, and this is exactly why I talk about having a drawdown, because you can't control the market. You can only control, you know, unfortunately, you're buying and selling in your positions. And if the market's giving us signals for one side and they're only giving us the entries on one side, well, we're not going to be able to take the other side. So a lot of this upside weight, obviously, haven't been able to capitalize off of really at all. But sometimes those days do happen. Um, we have a little bit of narrative driving some of this buying, I believe. Now, I haven't checked the actual individual symbols in terms of like SanDisk and NVIDIA and everything to see if, potentially there's some major tech news that's causing, tech overall to see the rally, while we're seeing other instruments pulling downward. No clue about that. But other than that, I am seeing, a lot of signals to sell within the day. So, kind of a wonky day. I do apologize for the put positions, but that's just sometimes how it goes. Yeah, I'll go ahead and check Gamble. I'll check Tesla as well. I go ahead and check Gamble first, though. So Gamble, and let's look on the daily time frame here. So Gamble's been having a very hard time ever since we expected that major buy-in. Now, I actually want to look on the weekly time frame here. I want to look at the monthly. So I'm not really seeing any major signals yet, other than the ADL on the daily time frame is holding very, very steady. Okay, so a lot of this selling in here is telling me that very likely it's just algorithmic selling. Okay. Now, this is a smaller cap, so it is a lot harder to fully, TA in terms of getting the absolute perfect technicals compared to a larger symbol. However, we see on the daily time frame, we had a lower Bollinger move, 5 mile retest, at the upper Bollinger, not a lower Bollinger yet, but the room towards the lower Bollinger isn't very much, so should likely strike today or tomorrow. From that range, I would try to, if you're, continuing to look for the upside, look for that cup to the upside because eventually there should be buying taking place here, especially when you do have this selling algorithm very much in place. But overall, moving averages and everything are telling us that um, we're very bearish on Gabble. It's well below the 200 mile, well below the 50 mile. All of our supports are well below that level. So Gamble needs to see some good news to really pull us out of that range. Now for Tesla, and I do want to circle back to the SPY really quick. Just so weird to see buying on the SPY for me when we're seeing other instruments, as elevated as they are. SPY a lot of bullish structure here, but we can start to look for, I don't want to stay in drawing, but potentially we can start to look for this head and shoulders if we don't just squeeze to the upside and complete a cup here. so I will just highlight this just in case. But we are looking for this Head and Shoulders to complete. Now, volatility very likely still pulling downward. So it's at the 7 or 107.27. So it did pull up to the 107.70, pulling back down towards this 107.27 range again. So not a lot of signals in here telling us that dealers are hedging positions just yet. And I will take a look at Tesla in just a second here. And then with oil, we're still seeing, you know, pretty large buying within oil. So kind of a weird day. Now Tesla, let's check Tesla on the daily time frame. All right, excuse me. So Tesla daily time frame, we've had this very large cup and potentially handle building. We see everything we really look for at the top of a cup. So we see the bearish structure. But with this bearish structure, we have not seen anything really quality in terms of structure to continue to the upside or downside. We've just been seeing very strong algorithmic selling to the downside so far. And very likely they're aiming for this chunk of liquidity. Now, the thing we have to be careful with Tesla is that with the daily time frame, now that we have been pulling downwards so greatly, again, we've had multiple lower Bollinger moves in here. We've not seen massive buying. The room to the upside, excuse me, is starting to open up pretty massively. Okay. Now, when I say upside, we're still within very bearish structure. Um, we should really be expecting this entire range of liquidity to be completely claimed, which that does take us back down towards the what, the 290, 294-ish range. But this is kind of like where in the SPY we were at the lower Bollinger, and then a few days later we were at the upper Bollinger. Well, because we've been seeing such a large amount of algorithmic selling, it can create the conditions where you can see a very large pop to the upside before further selling to the downside. So do have to be cautious of that. It's been quite a while since Tesla has had an upper Bollinger move. So while we're still very far from that range, I could not stop yawning. Excuse me, everybody. While we're still very far from that range, that's something we do have to contend with. Now, one thing with Tesla here is that we are creating multiple bearish conditions. We have all of our supports on the price action below the 50 MA, and now we're well below the 200-day moving average. So starting to see some real bearishness within Tesla. Again, I'm fully kind of expecting selling back down this 290 range, but we can have a short pull upward prior to that, so just be cautious of that. Now, I want to look at SPY because SPY is probably just still breaking out on the day because today makes no sense. Well, we are starting to see this micro head and shoulders forming, so this can finally give us a bit of that pullback we've been looking for. Do apologize, I just not stop yawning right now. Yeah, that's the thing with Gamble too, is like the financials with Gamble aren't even bad. Um, and it did get a deal with, got the company name. It got a major deal with somebody though. That was very important. Um, I think they got a deal with UNH if I'm not mistaken. Hey, good morning. But I believe they got a deal with UNH if I'm not mistaken, which that should be, you know, super awesome for Gamble. It's very surprising that we've been seeing the amount of selling we've been seeing out of Gamble. But overall, that should still be something to slowly add to and eventually see pull upward. Volatility of our VVIX, we are seeing slowly tick upward. Now, this is alluding towards this head and shoulders building within the SPY. So if we continue to see our selling to the downside, this will close that inverse cup. We'll close this further inverse cup there, complete this head and shoulders, and finally give us some of the selling we've been expecting in the SPY. Now, oil still just absolutely blaring. So again, we've been really expecting equity selling throughout the day, primarily because of this. Oil's just been absolutely super, super, super elevated. Um, Finally seeing the dollar pull up slightly because of that as well. Again, with the oil prices moving upward, that will, in caps lock in bold, will be moving the dollar upward and it will be moving the treasury yields upward. So what does that spell? That spells equity selling. So a lot of this buying really doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when we're seeing big and liquid seeing some selling. So Hig and Liquid did pull up from the early morning news, but again starting to sell downward. So weird price action, but and this selling trend did fully break. So we now have to contend with potentially semiconductors having a cup and handle. So a lot of mixed signals. Okay. Now this selling in SPY has invalidated some of this bullish structure to the upside. We do need to see selling all the way back down towards this 678.59 to fully invalidate the current bullish structures that are built. So we will be looking for that. And on VVIX, again, I'm just really looking for a pretty large, like upward. Now, I do want to just take a look at the news really quick. So no major news. Within the last at least 30 minutes, we've had Iran and Oman, or Oman, whatever, however it's pronounced, foreign ministers discuss U.S. talks in a phone call. Big deal. Iran's foreign minister said U.S. kept modifying its demands during the talks, causing failure to reach an agreement. Iran's foreign minister to French foreign minister made progress in the talks process with U.S. on several issues. More than 15 US warships in place to support the operation against Hezbollah. So, conflict is still very much in motion. And we're seeing our volatility tick downward slightly. But again, we're seeing our treasury yields pull upward. And if we see a continued rejection down here, this would show that inverse cup closing, the handle on that inverse cup, and then the breakdown. So potentially this could be some of that bearish structure we're really looking for. Really looking for the dollar to pull upward, quite a bit today. All right, keep yawning while I talk. Just cannot stay awake right now. Potentially seeing QQQ forming a bit of a, we know that it formed that cup, but it can be forming a little bit of a handle here, so we do have to be cautious. Semiconductors as well. SPY, we are expecting a rejection in this 1 minute time frame to create this inverse head and shoulders to the downside. VVIX ticked upward very slightly, but again, I still want to see like $5 of upside within the VVIX. So very choppy day so far. Very difficult to manage or navigate days so far because of some of the instruments, giving us very, very conflicting signals. So you missed Apple. I skipped silver, I went to gold. But the same thing. Wait, how come you bought options? Okay, so for drip, the reason why I bought options and shares is because the options will gain, you know, quite a lot more weight in terms of the movement, just because it's, you gain all the derivatives, you gain all the Greeks, everything else, so you can gain a little bit further movement. With that, you can also gain like the IV percentage and everything. So that's a way to gain a little bit further profit within the position. But the position overall, even with this Iranian conflict, still being very much in motion, even with oil prices continuing upward, I would still continue to add to those shares. Let me go ahead and look at CoreWeave really quick because I do want to look at all these symbols. Now, CoreWeave, 5 minute time frame, head and shoulders, okay. Daily time frame. It is day 2, it looks like, of the upper Bollinger, but I just want to double check that. See, so yep, that would have been a rejection. This would have been rejection. Okay, so today is day 2 of the upper Bollinger on CoreWeave, which means that this is when you look for the short entry. Now, the short entry, you can look to take back towards the 20 mob, but with the daily time frame, we primarily look for the 5 mob. The 5 mob is currently at the 95, so very likely with this closing higher, that's going to be around that 101-ish range. So roughly about $10 of downside, $11 of downside, give or take. So great short position um for that. nothing much else to say about that. Unfortunately, it's a great short position right now. There's this potential cup building within the day. Um, but even with that cup building, that still makes it a really good short position because at the top of the cup, that is when we short. Now let's look at Neo. Now Neo looks really good. So even though it is pushed up on the daily time frame, um, this isn't the ideal position to take a position in. However, it is very nice cup building. So if you can get, a push to the downside, if you can get a lower Bollinger move, I'm thinking very unlikely with the buying that's been occurring, but if you can, then lower Bollinger up towards the $8 range would be a very, very, very good trade. Um, in terms of the current moment though, technically it's kind of within that short range. Even though it's really not within the range that I'd want to short it at, just because there's not a whole lot of range within here. Um, even if you were to take puts, uh, I doubt you'd see a whole lot of weight moved or shifted within those puts. But if you can get down to the 20 mile on the daily time frame or the lower Bollinger, this looks like a pretty good buy to the upside. The only major concern is the ADL has just been pretty much a massive downtrend. So downtrend, 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 slight pop upward, which is this little bit of candle right here, and then it starts downtrending again. So potentially this can be forming a head and shoulders if it wants to continue selling the downside. Why that's continuing to draw? It's because I clicked the wrong button, that's why. Okay, but that's Neo. Um, Overall, look for this cup to close. If you can buy a dip within that cup, that'll be great. Potentially, there's a short opportunity. I don't like it though. But there is potentially a short opportunity to that $5 range. But again, I don't like that position to short. I just don't think that there's a whole ton of room within the options and everything currently. Let's go back to the HIG. HIG is continuing to sell on the day. Same with liquid. Now we have Nvidia finally starting to sell a little bit on the day. And let's check SPY because there was that micro head and shoulders starting to play out. Let's turn off the images. The head and shoulders playing out, continuing to reject that 20 mile on the 1 minute time frame. 5 minute time frame did finally give us that 20 mile. Um, I'm looking again a lot further from here because I am expecting much further selling to the downside today. Now, I am going to go ahead and be ending the stream fairly soon here because even though I can click with my right hand with this new cast, it does hurt quite a bit to click with that hand, and the way that the cast is, the plaster on my wrist, um, really kind of hurts my wrist when I put a lot of weight into my clicker finger. So due to that, I will be ending the stream in a little bit just because it is extremely painful to sit here and click. So, um, if there's anything anybody wants me to go over right now is a super, super, super good time. Um, just going to just shift hands here for a little bit because I just can't stand pain in my right hand right now. So I'm gonna go take my painkiller really quick. Um, but if there's any questions, feel free to type it out. And when I get back in just a couple of seconds here, I will be happy to answer that. So I'll be right back, everybody. Alright, I'm back, everybody. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see what we got going on here. So, inverse cup still in play. Looks deceptive. Drew that out way too far. Looks deceptive, but it is still very much in play. Okay. So we are looking for this structure to continue outward. This is not a cup here, so just be aware of that. Um, that is not a bullish cup. So we should be expecting the breakdown. We should be anticipating a smaller head and shoulders to form here. Of course, I drew the right shoulder really big. And from that right shoulder, we should be seeing a lot of this downside. Now, let's just very quickly go over everything. So, volatility did pull up to this 108, pulled back down. It's at the 107.45. Again, I really do need to see this moving up quite a bit today to really suggest that we're going to be selling. Now, oil, it's just been on an absolute tear almost all morning. So I'm really expecting this to heavily um, weigh against overall equities. We're seeing the treasury yields pushing up on the day. Um, excuse me. With with the treasury yields pushing upward, that means that the dollar will be pushing upward, which finally it's starting to do that. It was pulling downward during the early part of the morning, but this is what it should have been when oil's moving upward, when when treasury yields are moving upward, we should be seeing the dollar move upward as well. So we're finally starting to see the dollar move upward. Very likely should be seeing Bitcoin starting to sell, starting to see Bitcoin selling a little bit. Pig has been selling for a large majority of the day. Doesn't really look like it so much within the candles, but within the time and sales, the shares being sold are pretty heavy. Within QQQ, we did have that cup and handle breakout. This did not form an additional cup to the upside there. So look for the head and shoulders on that. But it did get very close to completing that cup. So we do have to be cautious of that. Semiconductors here, we are starting to see a larger breakdown. So we're starting to see this larger head and shoulders forming on the 1 minute time frame, which on the 5 minute time frame, that would pull us downward below the 20 MA, down towards the lower Bollinger, which would be at the top of that liquidity range. So we will be looking for this liquidity range to be taken out today. If we can push below that level, and kind of same deal for SPY here. So yeah, if there's no questions, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream here. My arm's been hurting pretty bad, along with my hand. Um, so I would like to be able to rest that a little bit. Um, Sorry, I'm just looking at a few things really quick. But if there's any questions, feel free to ask. I will be happy to answer them really quick. But other than that, um, I will be taking the rest of the day to relax. So, I do apologize for the earlier puts. Again, today these positions did get squeezed out a little bit, so I do want to mark those just to show that those positions did fail. It's always good to study failed positions. And as you know, it is very rare that our positions actually do fail. Um, Hopefully that doesn't sound egotistical or anything, but we usually do have a lot of success within our positions. So having these myths on us is something to really study. Okay. I mean, I believe in the last 2 to 3 months now, I think I've only missed seven of these trades. So does not happen very often. But overall, I'm still bearish on the day. Again, with the blockade now being in place, um, there's really no reason to be seeing the absurd buying that we've been seeing on the day. Um, yes, volatility has been pulling downward, but this is still very elevated. Okay, anything above this, um, this $98 range means that there is some selling taking place. Okay, there's been some selling taking place during today. Along with that, oil prices just being super, super, super elevated. And they've been climbing all morning ever since that news. Been seeing treasuries just dropping the entire morning ever since that news. Um, there's not a lot of reasons to see a whole ton of further upside buying from here. Um, unless I'm missing some sort of tech related news that's pumping tech. Um, However, I'm not seeing that reflected, even if there was some sort of tech news, right? I'm not seeing that reflected within the HIG. I'm not seeing that reflected within liquid. So whatever is causing the buying, I don't think it's going to last. Um, I do think that some of our other instruments are going to sort of take precedent over that, especially once we start seeing the dollar rise. Um, and again, with treasury yields rising, that essentially is showing that the dollar is gaining more weight. Um, so that those should be moving in tandem. Okay. Um, and all that really just means that volatility should be picking up on the day. Um, there's not a lot of reasons from a economic standpoint to see oil at the price it's at and to look at Nvidia or some of these other stocks and say, oh, well, wow, that's cheap right now. I want to buy that. Um, really don't think anybody's doing that. I could be wrong about that, but I really don't see the overall market doing that currently. Um, so I really do anticipate a major breakdown on the day. Now, with that said, there's a very, very awesome equity position that opened up. Okay. and this is Spaxu. Now, Silver and I play this pretty often. But there was a major buy-in before all this oil volatility, and Silver and I bought in around the $51 a share. It's currently $49 a share. Okay. That ran all the way from 51 up almost to the 63. Okay. So even though we're not at the lower Bollinger in terms of SPACSU, I'm not really looking at this in terms of technical. This is still a very, very, very quality equity position for the upside. And for the leap positions as well, again, I do believe I have the 56 strike call for the leap. Um, this would absolutely target this level and above if we're going to continue seeing the bear market like I'm anticipating that we will. So Spaxu is very, very awesome. Tomorrow morning I will be streaming. Um, because again, on Wednesday I'm getting my stitches taken out. So tomorrow morning, I will be streaming. Um, it should be a pretty good stream, as tomorrow morning is when we do have pretty much the largest data drop for the week. So, um, yeah, hopefully it'll be a good stream tomorrow. Um, so yeah, that's the expectations for the day, everybody. Um, I'm terrible at goodbyes. So, have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for sticking around, even though I had multiple of my programs close on me and everything else. I do appreciate it. Doesn't matter if I only have one viewer or, 200 viewers. All just the same. So, and I'm getting a phone call right now. Perfect timing. So, that's the end of the stream. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Trade safe, and I will talk to you